Captain Daniel Harker had flown the Bermuda Corridor dozens of times before. Miami to San Juan, San Juan to Miami. Routine. This flight should have been no different. The sky was pale and cloudless, the sea below a perfect slate of blue, and the autopilot hummed its usual background lullaby. The first sign something was wrong came as a shift in the light, not a flash, not lightning. It was subtle at first, a greenish tint creeping across the cockpit windows like algae spreading on glass. Harker frowned, checked his instruments. Everything read normal. No static, no anomalies on radar. But the light deepened, pulsing faintly, almost as if it had a rhythm. Not random, directed. The comms fizzed, voices warping into unrecognizable tones. A metallic taste spread in his mouth, and a sudden pressure filled his ears like descending too fast without clearing them. Then the plane lurched. No warning alarms. No shudder of turbulence. Just a deep, structural groan as if the airframe itself were being pulled apart by invisible hands. The passengers screamed, trays rattled, overhead bins popped open. The green light flared brighter, washing out the cockpit until the controls seemed to dissolve in the glow. For a moment, the world went silent. Then came the tearing sound, metal shearing, rivets snapping. Harker had a split-second view through the side window, the left wing peeling away, trailing vapor and shreds of fuel mist that caught the green glow like fireflies. Weightlessness gripped him. His harness bit into his shoulders as the cockpit spun away from the rest of the fuselage. Wind howled. His headset tore free. He didn't remember blacking out. He woke to salt water burning his eyes and the sky above him a blinding white. His body floated in a sea mottled with debris, luggage, seat cushions, jagged aluminum panels, and bodies. Some faced downward, arms swaying in the current. Others floated staring at the sun, their faces slack, mouths open. He gagged, bile and seawater mixing in his throat. Something brushed his leg, and for an instant he thought it was a survivor, but the pale arm drifting toward him was attached to nothing. Clutching a twisted panel of fuselage, he forced his mind to focus on survival. The swell was calm now, but the taste of fuel in the water told him the wreckage was bleeding its death into the sea. And then he saw it, a smudge on the horizon. Land. He kicked, every movement a battle. His right leg screamed with each stroke, and when he looked down, he saw why, a deep gash along the thigh, edges ragged where the metal had kissed him in the fall. Blood leaked into the water in a lazy ribbon. The sun crawled overhead. His arms and shoulders burned from the effort. Several times he thought he'd lose consciousness, but the smudge grew into a jagged green crown. The sound of waves breaking on rock became a promise. By the time his feet found sand beneath the surf, his muscles were nothing but shaking cords. He collapsed face down, the taste of wet grit in his teeth, the sound of his own breathing loud in his skull. The world swam in and out for hours. Shadows lengthened. The sun slid toward the horizon. Somewhere in that haze he saw movement, a silhouette at the tree line, tall, impossibly thin, not a human outline. The head was wrong, elongated backward, and alive somehow, crowned with a writhing mass that moved with the wind or with its own will. He blinked, and it was gone. When darkness fell, the cold came with it. His ribs screamed every time he breathed too deeply, 3, maybe 4 broken. The gash in his leg was swelling, the skin hot and tight. He pulled himself further inland, until he found a hollow in the roots of a massive tree. There he huddled through the night, listening. The jungle wasn't still. Leaves shifted without breeze. Something padded through the undergrowth, slow and deliberate. More than once, he thought he heard breathing that wasn't his own, deep, measured, patient. Morning brought the first clear thought: water. He found it trickling from black stone into a shallow pool. The surface shimmered with insect wings, and small, pale fish darted away when he cupped his hands. He drank until his stomach ached, the coolness clearing some of the fever fog. The gash in his leg was angry now, red streaks crawling toward his hip. Each step sent a deep ache radiating through his body. He scavenged what he could from the shore, a torn section of seat fabric to bind the wound, a cracked plastic bin to catch rainwater, a seat cushion for insulation. Days passed in a blurred loop. Drink, rest, forage. The pain worsened. He began to sweat even in the shade. Sometimes, as he drifted toward sleep, he felt the same presence he'd glimpsed on the first night. Not just watching, waiting. On the third morning, he woke to find something beside his shelter. A bundle of broad green leaves bound together with a twist of vine. Their scent was sharp and cool, like mint, but with a faint metallic edge. No footprints in the sand, no sign of approach. He stared at them for a long time, suspicion wrestling with desperation. The infection was already dragging him under. He could feel the fever tightening its grip. He chewed a corner of one leaf. The taste was bitter, then icy, spreading down his throat. He crushed the rest and packed them against the wound, binding it with the seat fabric. At first, the pain was blinding. His vision narrowed to a tunnel, and he bit down on his hand to keep from screaming. But within hours, the heat in his leg began to fade. By nightfall, the swelling had eased and the fever had broken. The next morning, he placed a single piece of fruit, small and yellow, found near the stream, outside his shelter. He told himself it was just a gesture, nothing more. When he woke again, the fruit was gone. In its place sat a crystal the size of his fist. It was greenish, translucent, and it pulsed faintly, like a slow heartbeat. Symbols were etched into its surface, shifting subtly when his eyes lingered, as if the stone breathed. When he touched it, warmth spread through his palm, and a vibration hummed low in his bones. That night, his dreams were unlike any he'd known. He saw the island from above, ringed in a halo of green light. Deep in the jungle, a clearing pulsed with the same rhythm as the crystal in his hand. He woke, knowing where it was, and some part of him knew the Watcher would be waiting there. Harker didn't remember deciding to leave. When the first light of dawn spilled across the beach, his body moved with a strange certainty, as if the dream had slipped hooks into his muscles and now reeled him inland. The jungle swallowed the sky almost instantly. Dense green pressed from every side, leaves dripping with last night's rain, roots snaking through the soil like the bones of something long dead. He clutched the crystal in his palm. It throbbed in slow, steady pulses, a cadence that matched his heartbeat exactly. Every time his grip loosened, the pull faded. Every time he tightened it, the feeling surged back, drawing him onward. Hours passed in a blur. His breath grew ragged. Mosquitoes swarmed his skin. At least twice, he thought he heard movement pacing him, soft footfalls shadowing his own. Once, when he turned sharply, he saw a shape melt back into the foliage. Not human, not animal either. The first true sign came in sound. A deep, resonant hum that rose and fell, like wind through a cathedral organ. It didn't just fill the air, it pressed into his chest, vibrating through his ribs. Then came the light. A pale green glow leaked through the undergrowth ahead, flickering as though filtered through water. The hum deepened, layered with other tones now, whispers maybe, though no words he recognized. When he broke through the last line of ferns, the sight stopped him cold. The clearing was circular, the ground bare except for a ring of black stone pillars. Each was taller than a man, carved with the same shifting symbols etched into the crystal. The air above them shimmered as if under intense heat, yet the temperature here was cooler, the wind carrying the scent of rain and something faintly metallic. At the center, the ground sloped into a shallow depression. Water pooled there, impossibly still despite the breeze. The surface reflected not the sky above, but the pulsing green glow from somewhere far below, an endless depth that seemed to stare back at him. And there it was, the Watcher. It stepped from behind one of the pillars, movement slow and deliberate. Its height was wrong, easily 7 feet, but what caught him first was the head. The elongated skull swept backward like the prow of a ship, the crown writhing in constant motion, fine tendrils shifting as if tasting the air. Its skin was not skin, but a semi-translucent membrane that caught the green light and refracted it through veins of darker shadow. Where eyes should have been were 2 deep hollows filled with faint bioluminescence. They flared once, and the crystal in his hand flared in response. When it spoke, there was no sound. The words appeared in his mind, formed not in English but in meaning, each thought carrying weight. You are not of here. You are touched by the sky's wound. Images flooded him, flashes of the plane tearing apart, of himself spinning through the air, of the green light wrapping around the wreckage like a net. But the images weren't from his memory. They were from above, from the Watcher's perspective. You fell through the breach. The breach is not meant for your kind. Harker's voice felt clumsy when he tried to speak. What is this place? The Watcher tilted its head slightly, the tendrils shifting in waves. A hinge. A seam between what you call world and what is beneath. You name it the triangle. It gestured, or at least the motion suggested a gesture, toward the pool. The breach feeds. The breach takes. And sometimes it leaves behind. Harker's breath caught. You left me the leaves. The green light in its hollows flared once more. You could serve, or you could be claimed. The crystal pulsed faster now, syncing not just with his heartbeat, but overriding it. He could feel it, each throb bending his pulse into its rhythm. His legs trembled. What do you want from me? The Watcher stepped closer, and the air between them thickened. He could see patterns moving just beneath its translucent surface, structures that weren't quite veins, weren't quite circuitry. To open. To close. The breach has grown restless. Others will come. Images slammed into him again, storm clouds spiraling in impossible geometry, ships drifting crewless, bodies suspended in green light beneath the waves. You will go to them. You will carry the mark. They will follow. The crystal's glow bled into his skin now, tracing faint green veins up his wrist. He tried to drop it, but his hand wouldn't obey. You will return, and you will bring them here. His knees buckled. The hum roared in his skull, drowning out thought. The last thing he saw before darkness claimed him was the Watcher leaning over him, tendrils brushing the side of his head like a blessing or a claim. When he woke, he was back on the shore. The jungle was silent. The crystal still sat in his palm, warm and alive. But now, when he looked at the horizon, he saw ships in the distance. Too many, all heading toward the island. And somehow, deep in his bones, he knew they were coming for him. The first vessel came into view at sunrise. A weather-beaten trawler, moving slow and deliberate through glass-smooth waters. Behind it, 3 more ships followed in a perfect line, their wakes threading toward the island like a noose. Harker sat in the shallows, water lapping at his waist, the crystal clutched against his chest. He'd barely slept since waking on the beach. His mind wasn't his alone anymore. She was there, the watcher, moving through his thoughts with the patient certainty of a predator in deep water. The air was wrong. No wind. No gulls. Even the usual insect drone had gone silent. The ocean smelled heavy, metallic, as though the tide itself was bleeding. The ship slowed as they neared the reef. Engines cut. No voices. No movement on deck. Harker squinted, shading his eyes against the sun, and froze. They weren't anchored. They weren't drifting. They were waiting. The crystal pulsed in his palm. A command, not in words but in sensation. Go. Meet them. His legs moved before he decided to stand. The sand sucked at his heels as he waded deeper, water rising to his chest, then his chin. Something beneath the surface brushed his calf, slick and strong, moving parallel to him. Not a fish. By the time he reached the first boat, a rope ladder had been dropped over the side. He climbed, his hands leaving wet prints that glowed faintly where they touched the metal. The deck was empty. Not abandoned, prepared. Several crates were stacked neatly in the center, sealed with unfamiliar markings that seemed to writhe if he looked too long. The wood was damp, but not from sea spray. A voice spoke behind him. You made it. Harker turned. The man was tall, broad-shouldered, with skin weathered by decades of sun. His eyes were pale, almost colorless, and fixed on the crystal. You've been chosen, the man said, stepping closer. We've been looking for the next one. The crystal pulsed hard. Behind his ribs, something pulsed back. Harker's throat felt dry. The next what? The man smiled, but it wasn't warm. The next vessel. Before Harker could speak again, the other ships began to close in. Men and women filed onto the deck from hidden hatches and below deck's quarters. None of them spoke. None of them blinked. Their movements were too synchronized, too deliberate. And every single one of them had faint green tracery running beneath their skin, like roots lit from within. He stumbled back toward the railing. The man didn't stop him. She told you to bring us, the man said. And you did, even if you don't understand it yet. From the reef, the water began to boil. Not from heat, from movement. Dark shapes rose from below, sleek and long-limbed, their forms distorting the sunlight. Tendrils broke the surface first, followed by the watchers themselves, more than one, dozens now, their skin shifting between invisibility and iridescence. The crew didn't panic. They dropped to their knees, heads bowed toward the island. Harker felt his own body lowering, as though strings inside his muscles had been cut and retied by another's hand. The watchers climbed aboard with inhuman grace, water sliding off their skin without a drop hitting the deck. One approached Harker directly, his watcher. Her presence in his head swelled until his own thoughts were barely whispers. It begins. She reached forward, placing her palm, cool and damp, against his chest. The crystal dissolved in his hand, becoming a stream of green light that flowed into him through her touch. Pain followed. Not sharp, but deep, like his bones were being rewritten. His breath hitched as something crawled beneath his skin, tracing veins into new, alien patterns. The edges of his vision shimmered with impossible colors. His heartbeat stopped. When it started again, it wasn't entirely his. The ocean was louder now, speaking in tones he could understand, the tides, the currents, the pull of the deep. He could feel the island breathing, the slow pulse of something ancient and vast beneath it. The man with the pale eyes approached, kneeling so his gaze was level. "You're one of us now," he said. But Harker barely heard him. His mind was already with hers, drifting through memories not his own, The crash of alien spores into primeval seas, the slow knitting of a new life form from coral and current and time. The watchers moved among the crew, touching foreheads, pressing tendrils to skin. With each contact, the glow beneath their flesh brightened. Parker turned toward the island. The jungle shimmered faintly, as though something immense beneath it had stirred. "You will guide them," she told him. "When the breach opens again, we will be ready." He didn't ask ready for what. Some part of him already knew. And as the ships began to move toward shore, their passengers silent and united, Parker felt the last unclaimed corner of his humanity slip quietly away, replaced by the slow, inevitable tide of something older than the world itself. The breach would open. They would be waiting.